Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
You are listening to the TrekRanks podcast, a member of the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network. This is episode 80, featuring the top 5 Picard Season 1 moments. Welcome, Star Trek fans. I am Jim Moorhouse, and I am the host of the TrekRanks podcast. And tonight, it's a big one. We're breaking down our top 5 Picard Season 1 moments in the patented TrekRanks fashion by really covering every corner of the series with our favorite production design elements, our favorite performers, characters, favorite episodes. So we'll get into all that in a minute with our diagnostic cycle. But first, let's introduce our great panel tonight. Coming to us all the way from the Korea Republic sector and making his TrekRanks debut is Daniel Martin. Daniel, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you so much, Jim. This is my favorite Star Trek podcast. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. All
the way across the globe. It's early. This is a temporal causality loop. It's early in the morning for him, middle of the afternoon for me, a day prior. All right, and also joining us, 2 returning veterans. Brooke Horton is making her 3rd appearance. I think she was Abstract 3s and crossovers, and Alex Perry is here as well. He's been on a lot. You may have heard him. Brooke, are you there?
Yes.
Alex, you there?
Jolan True.
Yes, appropriate for this topic. So, all right, let's get started with Daniel here quickly before we get into the topic, because met Daniel we'd connected on Twitter, but then he did a Klingon panel at STLV, and I'm happy to be able to tell him this, because I remember thinking, Klingon panel, I think I've heard it all when it comes to Klingon, so I'm probably not going to make that one. But then I did. And it was amazing. It was so good. I think, Alex, were you at that panel? Or did you? No, you missed that panel because you were getting some kind of photo op.
As is normally the case for me at STLV.
Yeah, lots of photo ops. So I remember talking about it. You missed that. I don't know, Brooke, did you happen to catch it? Probably not.
I don't remember if I did, but I wish I had.
I know I did with Claire Little, and we were both just kind of like taken aback at how good it was. So enough of that. Daniel, great job on that panel.
Thank you. No, that panel was a lot of fun for me because it was, it was a way to bring my academic experience to bear on Star Trek. And, I'm trying to slowly insert myself into STLV as the resident Klingon expert. So we'll see how that goes.
It was at that level. So
thank you.
Pretty cool. And then also I got to mention this because you just kind of revealed this a couple of weeks ago. We were talking on Twitter that your dad actually writes for Avenue 5, this great new sci-fi show, if you guys have seen it, and has worked with Armando Iannucci and also worked on Veep, which is one of my all-time favorite smart shows. So I don't even have a question. I just think that's really cool because Avenue 5 is amazing. I'm 3 behind. I'm slow. I'm saving them because I just want to go through it slowly. Yeah,
it's one of those things. I mean, for me, just as a viewer watching it, it's consistently unpredictable.
Totally.
It doesn't let you feel comfortable for a moment. It's with the opposite of comfort food viewing. It's just this kind of tension just gnawing at you throughout, even though it's a comedy. Yeah, it's kind of amazing, I think. So,
that's a good description, and it plays on all the Star Trek tropes and the circle of excrement around the ship is just one of the most brilliant things ever. And I am not a poop humor guy. But that is so smart. Anyway, okay, you have to watch the show now, hearing that, if you haven't seen it.
Please do. Everybody go and watch Avenue 5. It's great.
Genius.
Quarantine viewing.
Okay, let's get into our TrekRanks recalibration. Oh, no, we have to ask your Trek origin story. So is your dad part of your Trek origin story, Daniel? How'd you get into Trek?
I mean, I was a kid in the 80s in England, and the original series was always on TV. So I kind of absorbed it, I think, by osmosis. And then I just remember being super hyped for the next generation, seeing pictures of the cast and wow, there's a Klingon, there's a guy with a visor. This is going to be so cool. And from then on, it was just regularly watching Star Trek. And I guess, Alex, you might remember this, but there was a time when if you wanted to watch new Star Trek episodes as soon as you could, you had to buy them on VHS cassette.
Yeah.
2 episodes at a time for the cost of a DVD.
£15 a video.
like what you would pay right now for a Blu-ray, you'd pay for 2 episodes of Star Trek every 2 weeks. And I didn't care. I was so down for, new Trek. And it was, so yeah, I mean, it's always been something I've loved. And as I get older, I think I love it more and more, and I recognize its value more and more. So yeah, I'm a very proud Trek fan. It's always been a big part of my life, I think.
That is a great summary, because I too recognize the value more and more the older I get. All right, let's get to our TrekRanks recalibration.
What are you recalibrating? Everything. It's a sweeping, a recalibration of all systems.
As regular listeners will know, our general order number 1 here at TrekRanks is that we love Trek. We love to rank Trek via some deep dive topics just to get the conversation started. And remember, it's not about the ranks. They're just an excuse to talk about Star Trek. And as our good friend, the Vulcan Master, likes to remind us each week, the main driver for all of our discussion here at the TrekRanks podcast is
Infinite diversity.
In infinite combinations.
No wrong answers. It's not about being right or definitive in any way. It's just about sharing the things that we love about Trek. We love it all, from TOS to TNG, straight through to Enterprise, the Kelvin timeline, and now Discovery and short treks, and the first season of Star Trek Picard as well.
Black alert. Black alert.
And a reminder that this episode of TrekRanks, of course, is current through Picard Season 1. And one final reminder. Oh, no, we don't need that reminder because there's no films in play tonight. Okay, Worf, open hailing frequencies.
Hailing frequencies open. Amira.
And you can find TrekRanks on the net access interface links at TrekRanks.com. And you can contact me directly on Twitter at TrekRanks or at Enterprise Extra. And you can also leave us a message with your own picks at 609-512-LLAP. That's 609-512-5527. So to wrap it up here, Alex, Brooke, and Dan, why don't you guys tell us how we can get a hold of you on the net access interface? Alex.
You can find me on Twitter at Alexander T. Perry, and you can find my weekly Star Trek news show, Weekly Trek, also on the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network at Weekly Trek.
Essential listening. Brooke, how about you?
You can get in touch with me at A Whale in the Moon on Twitter, and I pray to the founders at STLV this year.
Oh my God, it's going to happen. Somehow, some way, it's going to happen. I actually feel bad for Creation, man. They must be taking a hit right now. We'll talk about that later. Why? We'll tell you later in this at the end of this show. Daniel, how about you? How can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, Twitter's the main thing that I use. DRDSM. I don't tweet very much, but when I do, there's a good chance it'll be about Trek. So yeah, check me up on Twitter.
Okay, let's get into our Level One Diagnostic to get into today's topic.
Diagnostic cycle will be complete in 20 seconds.
All right, as we always do for topics of this type, our season retrospectives, this week's diagnostic cycle is pretty critical in terms of how we made our picks. So we're not picking 5 random items that we want to highlight or our top 5 moments or anything like that. What we're doing is we're categorizing and defining each round a bit to cover more ground. So this is how we're going to break it down for our top 5 Picard Season 1 moments. In round 5, we're going to pick our favorite production design element. So that can be anything like your favorite ship or prop or costume or musical score or moment or visual effects, cinematography. It's whatever you think on the production design element side. In round 4, we're choosing our top performer or actor. So, and this isn't just about what you see on screen. It can also be about what maybe that actor brought to Star Trek in terms of their interaction with fans on Twitter, however you want to break it down. But think about it as broader than just the performance. And round 3 is the Dabo round. It's a complete wild card. You can pick anything you want in round 3. And round 2 is all about your favorite character. It's just about which character was the one that popped out of you and you want to talk about here. And round 1 is obvious. It's what we do at TrekRanks. It's your favorite episode of the season. And then, of course, we'll have some secondary systems picks for some of our outlying picks. So, Alex, Brooke, Daniel, all right, let's get into your guys' prime directives right now.
I do not concur with your captain's decision.
She's following our prime directive.
Define prime directive.
Okay, so Alex, let's start with you. How did you kind of break it down and narrow down your picks?
I've done a few of these now. I think I did Discovery Seasons 1 and 2 as well, and I didn't have a terribly sophisticated Prime Directive when I did either of those two, and I'm afraid I didn't have one this time either. I just sort of started thinking about each of the categories, and for me, there were pretty clear ones that popped into my head straight away, and once I started thinking about alternatives, it was clear that I was just going to stick with what I had initially gone with.
Interesting. How about you, Brooke?
I'm with Alex. I think it was nice this time to have such a small book of options to choose from. And having seen it also recently, it was easy to just kind of go with warm feelings. And that's what despite Star Trek always being a pretty cerebral series all across the board, I look for warm feelings. So that's what I kind of sought out.
Warm feelings as a Prime Directive is fantastic. Dan, how about you? How did you approach it?
I really envy you guys, your confidence with this, because I thought this would be such a great topic, and then I found it so hard to narrow it down. I mean, especially for me, the acting, because I could have had like 18 picks for that category.
That was tough.
So my Prime Directive was I'm kind of talking a bit about performances and some of the other answers as well. But really what I wanted to do was to try to mix the old and the new, to acknowledge the things that I love that Picard brought back, and as well as the new things it added to the canon, because I think there was a great mix there in the season. So I'm trying to cover both of those aspects of it.
Oh, that's very cool. I love that aspect or that perspective of your picks. And for me, I usually just go with my favorites in this category, similar to Alex. But I added one caveat this time, because in our last go around, Discovery Season 2, I didn't spread it around enough. Almost all my answers were New Eden and the Red Angel in terms of the episodes that were covered, because they all kind of just was really gravitating towards those as my top picks. So one thing I wanted to do here is I wanted to make sure I actively spread it around across different episodes, and when I get to one of my picks, I'll explain a little bit more about why I did that. Otherwise, it'd be a spoiler right now. So I'm going to cover as much ground as I can. All right, let's get into... Third Emoticon, you're up. It's time for the order of things.
I am a Jem'Hadar. He is a Vorta. It is the order of things.
Thank you, Third Emoticon. As always, just a quick reminder on how we're going to go through the order of things. First, we'll all reveal our 5-word summary and a hashtag to tease our pick. Then we'll announce our top 5 Star Trek Picard Season 1 moments based on the specific category that we're in. And at the end, we'll get some secondary systems selections for the picks that just missed our list. And as always, if we have any duplicates, make sure you listen for the Defiant Torpedoes. Okay, Alex, let's start with you for round 5. We're doing our favorite production design element. So what's your pick?
5-word summary, sung by his daughter, hashtag I'm not crying, you're crying. It is Blue Skies, as performed by Issa Briones, with a composition by Jeff Russo from Season 1, Episode 10, Et in Arcadia Ego Part 2.
Crazy.
Wow.
Love it.
This is my favorite piece of Star Trek music that we have gotten in a long time, which is very surprising because it's not an orchestral piece. It is a vocal piece, which is unusual for Star Trek, for there to be a vocal musical piece that has such a prominent role in the show itself. But I mean, how could it not be the fabulous composition of Blue Skies, which fits so very well with the soundtrack for Star Trek Picard Season 1 and is such a really strong thematic tie back to Star Trek Nemesis as the song that now sort of characterizes the character of Data in a really strong way. And the choice to use Issa Briones to sing it is an amazing one on 2 levels. The first, the obvious one, being that she is an amazing singer with a musical theater background, but because she is playing Soji and Daj on the show, adds that extra layer of meaning once you realize that it is Isa Briones, because it's effectively Data's daughter serenading him off into the afterlife.
Yeah, amazing. And also that it bookends the very beginning of the series that was such an amazing, cool element. And I remember I was doing the reviews for TrekCore, writing these, and with our editor, we were talking about, I wonder who sung it. I was thinking maybe it's Patrick Stewart's wife, because she's obviously a singer of that ilk. So when we found out it was Isa Briones, well, I was blown away. Amazing. Brooke or Daniel, any thoughts on this awesome pick?
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazingly powerful scene, I think, and I mean, every element comes together with this kind of real potency. So yeah, it's a great pick.
Agreed.
I told everybody to keep it short because we have 4 people on tonight. So we'll go with agreed. That's good. We know you love that pick. Okay. All right, let's go to Brooke's round 5 pick. Favorite production design element.
Okay, so 5 words. Blue skies smiling at me.
No way.
Hashtag. Hashtag Shakespeare in the original English. My pick is obviously the choice of using blue skies as we say goodbye to Data, with Picard's eulogy, kind of all wrapped into one. And obviously, I'm not going to try to say the episode in Latin since Alex just did it and saved me from that. So for my pick, when we lost Data in Nemesis, it was obviously crushing for everyone. And in one of the last scenes, we know that before quietly starts to sing Blue Skies, and it felt like we were sort of given this like hopeful goodbye to Data. But it didn't feel like enough, and the loss was really acute, but it's kind of what we had to live with. And I don't think up until Picard clues started to be leaked, I think that's what we all thought we would have to live with. And so to now be given this gift of a proper goodbye to this cherished character set to the music that gave us that glimmer of hope 18 years ago was amazing and beyond moving. It was easy to make this my pick.
I'm glad you kind of focus on that. Incredible that we got a goodbye for Data at that level and that emotional heft. Yeah, amazing.
The one we needed, the one we all wanted.
Of course. Such a gift. Incredible. All right, Daniel, Alex, any other comments on Blue Skies?
I mean, very well put, Brooke. I totally agree with you. I think that's exactly right.
Okay, so let's go to Dan's round 5 pick. What do you got for production design element?
Okay, so I'm going right back to the start of the season after you guys going to the end. 5 words and a hashtag. Bright future for Japanese island. Hashtag robotics on the rocks. This is the Daystrom Institute in Okinawa.
Cool. Deep cut. I love this.
I was, so delighted to have this, massively iconic, mentioned but never seen base of research in Okinawa, on this Japanese island. Not everything is in San Francisco or in Europe. So the fact that it was there was really so delightful to me. And then I thought the production design was great. You have this, we don't see it much with one shot really establishing, but it's right on the cliffs, which I think is a really nice way to sell it as being on an island. It's got this lovely kind of sweeping retro futuristic architecture that I think is very visually pleasing. And then I love this tiny detail of inside the Institute, all the signage is in English and in Japanese.
Oh,
and again,
cool.
I love the idea of language being preserved even in this far future. So yeah, it's like a small thing, but it was really, really pleasing to me to see that this is where they chose to locate it and how they chose to design it to really fit that location was really charming and really rewarding.
Well, as an old school TOS fan, Richard Daystrom deep cut reference like this was really, really cool to finally see it for the first time. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming you picked Remembrance as your episode.
Yeah, of course, episode 1 Remembrance.
Yeah, awesome. Super cool pick. I'm floored by how deep cut this is, but it's a great, great reference. And the fact that we got to see it in Okinawa is a great location for it. Just super cool. Alex, Brooke, any take on the Daystrom Institute?
I absolutely love any opportunity we get to see Earth architecture that isn't Starfleet headquarters, because it is always a little bit more interesting and a little bit more fun than either the Anaheim Convention Center or the Tillman Water Reclamation Plant. And it was really nice to see in those early episodes of Picard that was set on Earth, they did make more of an effort to show you a bit more of the planet than just Starfleet Command and Labar. And I really enjoyed any glimpse we got at seeing, what the rest of life looks like for people in the Federation.
My only comment is that had I a brain for science, I would happily work at the Daystrom Institute that we saw in the show. Agreed.
That was a really cool location. All right, let's go to my round 5 pick, and we have 3 picks from Et in Arcadia Ego. Mine, 5 words and a hashtag. I thought it was broken. Hashtag that's unexpected. And my pick is the Artifact, a.k.a. the Broken Borg Cube. And I picked Et in Arcadia Ego Part 2. Well, I'll tell you why in a second. But this is one of my toughest picks, actually. Normally, there's a lot of options for me to really think about in terms of production design. But there's nothing like really stood out to me this time in terms of ships. There weren't a lot of ships, costumes, or props. Obviously, the music always stands out. And I thought the sound design on this series is amazing, but the whole decision to build this super cool mystery of the entire series around an abandoned, broken Borg cube, I just love that. It looks amazing. It's got the shattered edges, the force fields. They have all these great tracking shots in and out of the Borg cube, which, with all the empty space, which I thought was a cool setup for a pretty big plot point later in Broken Pieces when all the drones get blown out into space. So there's 2 moments here. One was this great cliffhanger, of course, at the end of Remembrance, just staggering with the music and that visual. Even though it was kind of spoiled in the trailers and you kind of knew it was coming, it's still just an incredible moment. But the scene for me I picked is this moment when La Sirena is fighting Narek and his Romulan snakehead ship. And then, bam, you kind of get this feeling that something's coming, and Captain Rios says, that's unexpected. And that visual shot of the Borg cube coming through that conduit to join the fight, and knowing that 7 of 9 was commanding it just made it even more. It's just a super cool payoff for the whole concept of having the Artifact be at the core of this Picard series mystery. So, love that moment. Shout out to Jason Zimmerman, who's the lead visual effects, and Matthew Taylor, who did the sound on that, because the sound is incredible.
The sound is killer. It's just, I almost picked that moment for this, just when that cube comes out of the corridor and it just boom.
Yeah, it is really, it's riveting.
That's unexpected.
Alex, Daniel, any thoughts on that one?
I love the way that the cube that they created for this season was visually distinctive on each side. So you actually, the previous Borg cubes have always felt very, they sort of are technological, but they're also very uniform, right? You flip a Borg cube around, you couldn't necessarily tell which side was which. This one was really interesting on all of the different sides you saw it. And I thought that was just a really nice touch.
Yeah, super, super cool design. Daniel, any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I was tempted to pick the Borg cube just because I loved the idea of these kind of dormitories on a Borg cube and everybody living there and working there. And the idea of making it like a home was so uncanny compared to what we've seen previously of Borg, Borg ships. And I just thought it was a really interesting use of Borg technology the whole season.
Yeah, really smart kind of breakaway from anything you've ever seen before. From Michael Chabon, and I'm sure Kirsten Beyer had a lot to do with that one too.
I just hate that I don't know why it has a whole corner that opens so that everyone can get sucked out into space. What the practical function of that, because it sucked when somebody used it for the worst possible thing.
Ooh, hiss, Narissa. Okay, let's go to round 4. Our top performer or actor, and again, not a character, consideration here is kind of the on and off screen performance from an actor. So, Alex, what's your pick?
Okay, so I have a confession to make, which is that I cheated for this one. I spent a lot of time thinking about that idea of interacting with fans off screen, and I kept coming back to one name, and it was not an actor or performer in the show, but it is somebody who is very important to the show itself. 5-word summary: fan in the captain's chair, hashtag ask me anything. And my pick is actually Michael Chabon. And the episode I picked was episode 106, which is The Impossible Box, because that was the first episode in which he started running his effectively Ask Me Anything Q&As over on Instagram Live, where for 106 through the finale, he was doing these Q&As where you could ask him anything, and he would, assuming it was not an offensive question, normally always answer it and give you just a ton of really interesting detail into each episode. Things that maybe didn't make it onto the screen, explanations about certain choices that were made. We have, since Ron Moore's AOL chats in the Deep Space Nine days, not had that kind of level of care and attention from a member of the Star Trek production team like we got from Chabon as showrunner for season 1, and it just added infinitely so much to the enjoyment of the product itself, and it helped blunt some of the rough edges when there were things about the episode that maybe were not immediately clear, or where, you know, there were certain questions about. I found it thoroughly. I was just as excited to click through his little slideshow every week as I was to watch the episode itself. And so for that reason, Michael Chabon was my pick.
I love this pick, and it's not really cheating. I should actually probably add creator into this category as well, because the way he interacts, so cool. Again, I'm going to say it a lot in this episode. What a gift this guy gave us. His writing, the layers that he puts into it, his prose, it really is a different level from a novelist coming in with a Pulitzer Prize winning background. It's incredible. Brooke, Daniel, what's your take on this one?
I hope he's at STLV. I'm going to keep saying
that would be amazing if he would show up at one, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a great showrunner, and I agree with Alex. Those Q&As, I think, were really interesting. I mean, I think for a lot of fans, it was like a way to satisfy their impatience, like him assuring you, yes, this will pay off later, yes, this will be explained. But for me, I just really loved the insight into the creative process and the kinds of things that he found interesting about the character of Picard and the story he was telling. So yeah, it's a great pick.
Yeah, it's a great way to frame it in terms of their patience.
Yeah, but like fans tend to be impatient. They want to know, you know, well, why did this happen? And a lot of I feel like he's just saying to guys, hey, we'll just wait. You know, we'll get to that later. And
brilliant. Alex, what episode did you pick? Did you pick Impossible Box or?
I did, yes, 106.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, Brooke, how about you? What's your top performer or actor?
So my 5 words are medical, navigation, hospitality, Ian, and Emmett. And my hashtag is please state the nature of your fill-in-the-blank emergency. My pick for top performer is Santiago Cabrera as Chris Rios, as well as the handful of holograms that act as the usual crew of the La Sirena. And for my episode, I picked Broken Pieces, which is, of course, when we got them all sitting down in a room together, sitting, standing, wandering, together as Raffi asked her questions. Playing Rios alone would have left me really happy with Santiago Cabrera as a part of Star Trek, like a new adopted part of Star Trek, but to layer on the 5 distinct holograms that each had a different demeanor, a different accent, different body language, and then obviously different functions. As the character, it felt like next level performing. And I personally am a Trekkie who's loved every holographic character, starting for my first Trek, which was Vic Fontaine. I've loved them all. So these 5 felt like really wonderful additions to this like already solid pantheon.
Yeah, his performance, very Tatiana Maslany level Orphan Black type performance that they asked him to do this. It was so smart. Such a great way to kind of circumvent the rogue captain stereotype that I think a lot of people, including myself, were maybe expecting when you heard about this character. So I love this pick. Genius. Alex and Daniel, any take?
I love it. I think, something that making more Star Trek allows the writers and producers and actors to do is take ideas that have already been presented in previous seasons or episodes and give a new twist or do something fun with it. And I mean, what is more fun than having 5 different versions of emergency holograms who serve these different purposes and have there be this explanation as to why they all end up sort of looking like the captain of the ship and each behaving slightly differently, and this whole idea of the basic install and the self-scan. I just thought it was delightful.
Answer to your question, nothing is more fun than that. Dan?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those performances where I felt like the actor completely disappears into the performance. I mean, he is so different as each of these holograms. The accent, the mannerisms. It's very sophisticated acting. I think it's very good.
Yeah, genius. Okay, Dan, how about you? What's your round 4 pick?
Okay, 5 words and a hashtag. Inner conflict is expertly expressed. Hashtag red velvet cake everywhere. This is Alison Pill as Agnes Jurati.
Oh, I love it.
And I really wanted to talk about Alison Pill because I think her character is not the most interesting character, not necessarily the most likable character, but I think as an actor, her performances were just so good and nuanced, and the range of, micro expressions playing across her face as she goes through. I mean, I think the experience she goes through in the season is more kind of traumatic and extreme than almost anybody else, because for most of the season, she's not really herself. And playing all of those extremes, I think she was just absolutely brilliant. And I worry that it's not as flashy a performance as some other ones. So, I really wanted to recognize, I think she was absolutely brilliant. I tied this pick to episode 8, Broken Pieces, because I think that's where she starts to believe that she could be redeemed. And that first meeting she has with Soji, I thought was a masterwork of like conflicting emotions. So, yeah, I'm a big fan.
I love this pick so much that it is my exact same pick. I had Alison Pill from Broken Pieces, my 5 words and a hashtag.
Oh, wow.
You drink when you're thirsty, hashtag. It's just so beautiful. And it's that moment you were just talking about. That moment is so underrated. It's such a strong performance. I think it's easy to kind of lose perspective sometimes on Trek and our love for it in terms of saying this guy or that guy is Emmy worthy because, listen, Star Trek's not going to get nominated for Emmys. Okay, it's just not. 94, it got nominated for Best Drama, which was a miracle that happened. While it was syndicated, Leonard Nimoy used to get nominated, but that's really it. This one, I know she's not going to get nominated, but this is literally the performance that might be able to kind of break through a little bit because she's from that ilk of, she has an acting pedigree that at least, she's been in some big time A-list films and been nominated like for Milk and Vice and Aaron Sorkin's Showroom in terms of like being nominated as a cast for Critics' Choice Awards, Screen Actors Guild Awards. She's been nominated for a Tony Award. If there's ever going to be a breakthrough, it should be this actress and this character because everything she did was amazing. And I think I'm like you, Dan. I kind of went through it. I didn't think I was going to pick her, but and normally I focus a little more on the off-screen stuff. Like I really considered Jonathan Del Arco for his interaction with fans. I thought he would be a great pick. But I just, even though she's great in the interviews and stuff, but she doesn't have a real social presence. But I picked her because the performance is just that strong. And I'm really glad you highlighted that her redemption arc, which, you can like that or not like it. And Michael Chabon, in your pick, Alex, literally says, yeah, she's still going to face her. She's still going to have to answer to it. It just didn't happen at the end of that episode. But her redemption and the fact that at that moment you can see her mind is clear again and she's not being clouded by the psychic block and the forced mind meld from O, and she's just appreciating Soji standing in front of her, which is the culmination of her life's work. I love that moment. absolute pure joy. Really well done. So, Alex and Brooke, any comments on Alison Pill from Broken Pieces?
It's kind of a chicken or the egg thing, but having read the Last Best Hope, which I started reading halfway through the series, Alison Pill was perfect to imagine while reading the novel. She fit it completely.
Yeah, she's a great character and provides a great performance. I mean, in terms of actors on that show who were asked to show some really significant range, it's her, and Issa Briones is probably the only one who even comes close, and that's because she was playing three totally different people during the course of the season. So yeah, I mean, Alison totally knocked it out of the park, from showing that kind of sense of wonder about Soji and Broken Pieces, to murdering Bruce Maddox in Stardust City Rag, to, go all the way even back to that first conversation with Picard in Remembrance, and you get, three totally different performances that all still feel very authentically the same person.
Yep, well said. Good breakdown. All right, so in round 5, we had 3 picks for Et in Arcadia Eagle, and in round 4, we had 3 picks for Broken Pieces. So that's interesting. Let's go to the Dabo round. Round 3, Alex, what's your wild card pick?
Okay, I'm actually going to tally one more for Et in Arcadia Ego Part 2. 5-word summary: nothing would make me happier. # treacherous Tal Shiar ass. It is the appearance of acting Captain William T. Riker aboard the USS Zhang He in the season finale of Star Trek Picard. I could not pick this in some way, shape, or form. This was my favorite moment from the season as a whole, in terms of jump out of your seat, fist pump in the air. I can't believe they just did that. And then the scene itself plays out so well. I mean, and in some ways, you really earned it, because you got a Riker and Troy who were very different in Nepenthe, who were in this very different stage of their lives and were doing different things and had different kind of philosophies and perspectives. And that was amazing. But then getting back in the uniform with the lean in the chair, with the swagger, with the authoritative command, was the sort of knock it out of the park, kind of both authentic callback that sort of plays on the nostalgia heartstrings, but also feels very true to who Riker would be so many years after Nemesis. That for me, it was just an incredible scene, an incredible moment. I was so happy about it. And I had purposefully not paid attention to the opening credits for the episode, because I knew that they had spoiled previous character appearances. So I did not know he was going to be in the episode until the moment he comes on screen. And that was just a fabulous moment.
I did the same thing. I made sure to skip the opening credits because I'd been spoiled on a couple before. My only comment here, I love this pick. It's such an incredible moment. Another gift that we got this. One of my favorite parts of it was the very end when he's saying goodbye to Picard, and he doesn't know that he's saying goodbye for the last time, and Jean-Luc does, and he says adieu. And by the way, Alison Pill is standing off on the side looking at that conversation and goes, "Oh my God, I know exactly what just happened." And her face is amazing because she's an incredible actress. Love this pick. Really, really, really good. Brooke and Dan, any comments?
I appreciated this version of Riker, having been through all the things that he's been through and all the phases of his life, gives no more fucks. And so the lean in that chair, I mean, he is 100% there as a representative of Starfleet, but I truly believe that he was using Starfleet for Picard. His number one agenda was to be there for Picard. So yeah, it was a very authentic Riker.
I like that. His number one agenda was to be there for Picard more than anything else. What are you going to do? Just leave me back on the Pente making pizzas? Dan, how about you, man?
Nothing to add, really. I mean, I was just kind of nodding and smiling as Alex was summarizing it. It was a really triumphant feeling. And maybe there's a tiny part of me that was like hoping beyond hope it would be Captain Worf or somebody, but realistically, it was such an exciting, I guess, a pure feel good moment in an episode which has got lots of emotional ups and downs. It was really what I think we all needed at that point. So yeah, it was a great pick.
Yeah, cool. All right, Brooke, how about you? What's your Dabo round pick?
So I hope that I can convey my thoughts on this one, because I felt like, as I thought about it, it might come across as kind of nebulous. But my 5 words were, is this a new Eden? And my hashtag is classic Star Trek settlement. My pick is the synth settlement on Coppelius, and my episode being Ed in Arcadia Ego Part 1.
Cool.
So this episode gave us 2 particular things that stood out to me as being like totally in the vein of Trek tradition: a Latin title that we'll all struggle to say going forward, and a classic Trek commune. When we first saw the synth colony, it was full of these like radiant, attractive, fit people wearing like drapey, flowy, colorful outfits. And we saw them practicing space martial arts and playing space board games. And it took me back to the crew of the Enterprise going down for shore leave in Justice. And it made me think of Ryza. And it made me imagine that Coppelius this was my first thought, probably exactly what the space hippies were looking for in the way to Eden. So aside from being flesh and blood, obviously they'd fit in there. But in this particular episode, I loved that the colony was a chance for the writers of this show to follow in a pretty solid Trek tradition of creating a place and a people that were unique and colorful and alien. And for me, I'd suggest that that's part of what's always been at the heart of away missions and why we've gotten so many fun, like, Let's Beam Down episodes. This colony felt so classically Trek to me. So it was kind of my warmest, fuzziest moment.
That is super cool. I didn't really think of it in that light, but it totally is. That's genius. And all in different shades of gold is the only description you didn't add to all the people there.
Yep.
That was actually one of the things I really liked about it. It was one of Michael Chabon's updates and on his Q&A when he said that they all kind of had their own version of what they wanted, the way to honor kind of what became before them, obviously Data. So they all had different shades of gold and the different looks. So super cool. That is Coppelius Station. Awesome pick. Alex, Dan, what's your take?
I am always here for weird Star Trek musical instruments, and as they were walking around, a number of the synths were playing weird Star Trek musical instruments. So what more could you ask for?
It's tradition.
Yeah, I mean, Brooke, I love that you love this, because to me it was exactly that. Like, in some ways so familiar. The away team goes to the settlement and the locals are like, outwardly friendly but secretly untrustworthy. And there was something like so nicely nostalgic about it. Exactly. And I think seeing the positives of that is a really, really cool thing to do. So yeah, that's a great pick.
I love it. I'll give a shout out to the perfectly kind of creepy Arcana and Saga twin actresses who were just a little bit off, but interesting.
Yeah.
And I hadn't really heard too many people talk about it, but the moment where she touches Picard's face and talks about the lines and the grief and the history you see in them, that was another classic Chabon piece of literary mastery there. Love that. Okay, Dan, what is your Dabo round pick?
Okay, 5 words and a hashtag. New stories about old enemies, hashtag Jolan True. And this is just the Romulans in the broadest possible sense. Because I just love what Picard did with the Romulans. I think we knew that Discovery could not get into Romulan culture at all because of its placement in the timeline. And that kind of left Picard a chance to revisit a culture we hadn't seen in canon for, 20 years. And what I love is that it took the Romulans, who are pretty monocultural in the way a lot of old Trek adversaries were, and really just exploded it out and gave us so many different, sub-factions of Romulans and a different understanding of Romulans. And I'm going to try not to, take up the rest of the episode on this, but I just love, I loved Orla Brady as Laris, as a superb character, really, really so fun. Good. I loved Elnor. He's so noble and naive in a way that no other Romulan has been. And I love Narissa. And I was nearly going to do this for my favorite character just to make you all crazy. But I love Narissa because she's positioned initially as she is the stereotypical Romulan, a woman in a position of power who's scheming. We love to hate her. But when we see the backstory of the admonition, we realize that this is like a righteous crusade for her. Mm-hmm. She truly believes that what she is doing is going to save all sentient life in the universe. And once that clicks into place, she's a much more nuanced, interesting character. I love Narek because he's, he hasn't experienced the admonition. So he's much more conflicted because I don't think he really truly believes it. And so he's struggling with his feelings for Soji, his loyalty to his sister. And, I'm completely convinced Narek knew that Romulan poison gas would not kill Soji. He deliberately chose a method of execution that he knew she would survive. And he's always playing both sides and trying to come out in the middle. So, yeah, my rambling Dabo Round pick is just, I love the explosion of Romulan culture into all these different colors and all these different shades. It was such an interesting, rewarding thing to see. If I tie it to an episode, I guess, episode 4, Absolute Candor, because I loved the Port Miwat, and I loved seeing this refugee settlement. But yeah, basically the whole season long, every time a Romulan popped up on screen, I was fascinated.
We could literally do a full podcast just on the Romulans and the Picard series. It's amazing.
Or Dan could do a panel, which I would love.
Oh my God. What a perspective, Dan. I didn't even think of that he chose a method that she could escape from. I had not considered that. I love it. I am going to sit with that for a while because I was really in the mode of, okay, you're dead to me now, Narek, that you actually pulled the trigger there. But that's a great perspective. Very interesting. This was going to be my secondary system choice, the Romulans. I love the tarot cards. I love the mythology that connected from the beginning to the end. I love the reveal at the end about Narek being kind of the outcast from his family, the failed Zhat Vash. That was really good. Narissa is a fantastic villain, and they didn't plan this. I have no idea what goes into how characters are credited as regulars or recurring. She's a recurring character, but she had more screen time than than regulars on the show. But she was a regular as much as, other than how they defined it in Hollywood. But it tricked me because when she comes in, you think she's a bit player and you're not really sure. You're thinking, but she's there through the whole thing. And there's I think it was during the pet day when in one of my reviews, I just went, okay, she's the big bad and she's chewing scenery, and you know what? It's awesome. It really is so much fun to see the way Peyton List, the actress, what she brought to that character. So I love the co-op Malat. I'm glad you mentioned Absolute Candor. It's one of my favorite episodes from the season. And yeah, fantastic pick. Brooke and Alex, what's your take? Brooke?
I think the reason she feels like a main character is that she's crafted in a way that you think she's always listening. She's like, even when you're off planet or you're in a totally different scene, it feels like she's kind of lurking just off camera, because that's her skill set, and she really sells it. But Dan, that was really well put. I really appreciate your pick and your thoughts.
The Romulans have rocketed up the list of most nuanced Star Trek races just in 10 episodes. They've probably gone from being one of the least nuanced of all of the races to being up there with Bajorans, Cardassians, Vulcans. I would say they're probably even more nuanced at this point than the Klingons are, and we've gotten so much more screen time from the Klingons. That's such a tremendous achievement for this show to have given, in just 10 episodes, this race so much depth and so many interesting directions that they could go in and making them more real.
Agreed. I can't stop on this one. So I have two more things. One, I rewatched The End is the Beginning, the episode where Ramda and Soji kind of have that exchange. And it connects so well now to Narek's story at the end around the campfire. He's explaining the mythology of the two sisters, and all of those pieces now fit with everything Ramda says in The End is the Beginning. Really, really great storytelling from Michael Chabon there. And then he, in one of those Q&A answers that Alex referenced, I'm glad you picked him, Alex. He references basically there's an origin story for the Romulans here. And basically the fact that they discovered the admonition kind of built their society, or caused their society to be the secretive society that it is. And that was really interesting the way he spoke about it, much more eloquently than I just did right there. Okay, let's go to my Dabo Round pick. 5 words and a hashtag. Let's start with 5 words and a hashtag. So are we excited? Intimidated? Hashtag maybe a teensy bit starstruck. It is the Rios holograms and Rios himself, of course. And my episode was The End is the Beginning. So same as your pick from round 4, Brooke. I chose The End is the Beginning, not Broken Pieces, because I just love the introduction of these characters in this episode. And we'll say it again. We had Enoch, navigation, Emil, the medical hologram, Ian in engineering, Emmett at tactical, and of course, the lovely Mr. Hospitality. This one of the smartest and most clever things they could have done is to take this character and introduce him this way when Jean-Luc beams on board and he comes walking around the corner, and I'm thinking, who is this guy? Oh, hologram, got it. And then the next scene, you see the navigation hologram. It's the medical hologram in the first scene. So, okay, whatever. He has a medical hologram that looks like himself. The next scene, you meet Enoch, the excitable, very positive, emotive navigation hologram who is driving Rios crazy. And I love this moment. I love this whole scene when he says, Jean-Luc Picard, chief contact with the Q continuum, arbiter of the succession of the Klingon Emperor, keeps going. The man even worked alongside the great Spock. I love that moment. Spectacular introduction. Any other comments from you guys on the Rios holograms before we move on? Since it's a duplicate, anyone want to jump in?
I just feel like which hologram was it that you were quoting at the end?
Enoch, the navigation hologram.
I feel like he and Waxana Troy would have gotten along really well together. Like he could just go ahead of her and give all of her like accolades. And yep. It was,
she would love him.
She would love him for many reasons.
All right, let's go to round 2. We have 3 duplicates now. That's amazing. 3 duplicates through 3 rounds. That's not usually the case for this topic. Let's go until we get to the top round, then we might have.
There will be more, yeah. Don't worry.
Sure. Okay, let's go to round 2. Alex, who's your favorite character? Oh, we might get some more duplicates here.
We might. I tried to be sophisticated with this pick, and I just couldn't. 5-word summary: the name of the show, hashtag a journey of rediscovery. My pick is Jean-Luc Picard, and the episode I picked is the pilot, Remembrance. I mean,
so clever.
There are so many great characters in the show, but for me, the most interesting story across all 10 of the episodes has been this journey that Picard has been on from the Hermit of Labar, which was what Commodore O called him very early in the season, to through him being exposed to his mistakes, to his hubris, to starting to realize the importance of fixing some of those mistakes and being engaged with the world and helping and having a mission through his death and through his resurrection. Picard's journey in this season is one that has generated a huge amount of discussion. And frankly, it's one that not everybody has responded super well to. I think there are lots of people who really wanted more of that sort of classic Picard personality, behavior, responses to certain sets of situations. But I think the story they told over these 10 episodes of the man sort of rediscovering and reclaiming himself is very similar to a lot of the arguments I hear around why it's important to sort of test the idea of the optimistic future. And that's that Picard is the best character in all of Star Trek. And I mean that in terms of like, he is the most moral, the most correct, the most automatically principled and steady-handed and intelligent and empathetic, etc., etc., etc. And if that's all he ever is, then he is a totally inaccessible superhuman that bears no resemblance to an actual person. And by virtue of not bearing a resemblance to an actual person, is an unachievable ideal, right? He becomes a version of an Adonis, right? I know it's weird to call Sir Patrick Stewart an Adonis. I know there are many people who do consider him so. But showing a version of this character in his lowest moments makes the character in his highest moments, aka Star Trek The Next Generation, aka I think where we found the character by the end of the season, all the more worthwhile. And while it's been a difficult journey to see your ultimate hero deconstructed and then reconstructed again in more ways than one, I think it has been a richly rewarding experience for having done so, and makes the character all the better for it.
Extremely well said. I'm going to add one thing, that one of the things I'm not going to say I loved it or it was one of my favorite things, because I didn't like it, but it's the show. In the first 5 episodes, in each one, somebody just gives him the cold shoulder or faces him or tells him exactly everything he's doing wrong. They just greet him the way he's never greeted before. So the first 5 episodes, up until the Hugh hug, which when that happened, I needed it so bad. I just felt like, God, somebody is finally like, oh my God, you're Jean-Luc Picard. You're awesome. Because prior to that, everybody who met him was just like, yeah, whatever, dude. Here's why you're wrong, which we'd never seen. And I didn't like it because I don't want to see that, but it's the show. And it's awesome. And it was really, really, really well done in terms of how they built that up. So, Brooke and Dan, any comments on Jean-Luc?
I mean, I think, Alex, you put it really, really well. I think the idea of leaning into Picard's character flaws, the idea that this great man who's got the experience of, more than one lifetime in his head, obviously, actually many lifetimes in his head, but the idea that he still has things to learn, that he still has ways to grow, I think was just such a brilliant way to do it. I had assumed when the show started it would be about surrounding Picard with interesting people and that he would be mostly unchanged. But of course that was, completely wrong, because it's really about him continuing to grow and evolve as a character. And that's, I agree, troubling to longtime fans in some ways. And it can be disquieting that this icon of perfection, this Adonis, as you say, is maybe not exactly that perfect, but it was so satisfying in terms of his character. So yeah, it's the obvious pick, and it's a great pick. I agree.
Yeah, I guess I've never really understood how anyone would expect a character to not change significantly over the course of years and experience. And like from personal experience, I look at like my dad, who is a really strong leader of a human, but times and circumstance and ups and downs have changed him significantly, and it's compounded some of the things in the past, but he's not the same man that he was. There's been a softening, and there's been I'd say more empathy over the years as more things have been experienced, and also with age comes the impact of how society views us. And I think that everyone would like to think that doesn't affect us all that much, but it really does. And so the dismissive moments in Picard's life and the fact that he's not the same man, I mean, that's what you will hear from an aging person, so to me it felt very honest. I think anything else would have felt like a character under glass.
Very honest. Great way to summarize it. All right, Brooke, how about you? What's your character pick?
So my favorite character is is somebody brand new. My 5 words are wild girl of the woods, #pacifist, and my pick is Kestra Troy Riker. And my episode,
start crying.
That's a really good pick. That's a really good pick.
My episode is obviously Nepenthe, because that's when we meet her, and when I really do hope we see her again. But I will readily admit to connecting with the Kestra character from the outset, because she reminded me a lot of being a kid myself. I feel like I'm speaking really self-reflectively in the last 2 comments, but I grew up out in the country with woods to run around in and explore, and it really wasn't uncommon to find my sister and I dressed up as one character, something or another, and building forts and using our imaginations. And it was a really magical way to grow up. And so I immediately had a soft spot for Nepenthe, both the episode and the planet, and the environment that Troy and Riker chose for their children, which felt really right. And I don't know that I would have anticipated that being their choice until we saw it, and it was like, nope, this is what they would choose. As a character, though, I think what I most appreciated about Kestra is her openness, and also her candor, which is obviously a kind of a vein that runs through this whole series. But she was open in embracing Soji, and then she was open in sharing with Soji all these stories and these facts that she knew about Data. And it felt like somehow the writers managed to create a character who had never met Data, but was reminding us of all the things we loved about him. And I felt like her stories did what maybe a montage of clips would have done. We're talking like the warm feelings, what a montage might have done, but somehow these stories felt even warmer. They were through the eyes of a child, and they were softer, and they were tinged with this reminiscence that I think we can assume had been sort of absorbed from her parents telling stories of their friend.
You know a lot about Data.
My parents served with him in Starfleet until he died. A long time ago on a ship called the Enterprise. Picard was the captain. My dad said he was the greatest Starfleet captain ever. It seems weird to make an android with mucus and saliva, but I guess Data would do it like that.
I don't see how Data could be my father. I mean, if I was made, it was probably about 3 years ago. Wait, why would Data want to make an android with mucus and saliva?
Well, he was always trying to be more human. He could do all these amazing things, but all he ever really wanted to do was, like, have dreams and tell jokes and, like, learn how to ballroom dance.
And so to me, I feel like the takeaway from her character, her on her own, and I liked her adventurous spirit and I liked her independence. But really, I think the takeaway was that she showed us that Data lived beyond death through quantum simulation, obviously, but he also really survived through the stories that, I don't mean to be punny, but like were told to the next generation. And I hope we see her in season 2.
Amazing pick. She's an incredible, literally a perfect character. It's incredible what they did with her in 1 hour, and her link to the outcomes and the end of the series. And you said it best, is her descriptions, the way she enthusiastically described Data as could do all these amazing things, but all he ever wanted to do was paint and learn to ballroom dance. I'm literally bawling. Just even, I want to cry just thinking about it. It's an amazing moment.
And yet she never knew him herself, which means how much love did Troy and Riker have for him that transferred over. It was incredible.
That's an even better perspective. You're going to make me cry even harder next time I watch it. Dan and Alex, what's your take on the perfect Kestra Troy Riker?
Here's all I'll say. If they make a Starfleet Academy show and Kestra Troy Riker is not a main character on that show, I'm coming for you, Kurtzman.
Yeah, it's really set up so well. And the actress, Lulu Wilson, so good. Dan, any quick comments?
All I can do is to vehemently disagree with Alex, because she's going straight to the Klingon Academy with Uncle Worf. Where skills will be sharpened to perfection. She's not going to join Starfleet. She's going to get a bat'leth in her hand when she's a teenager and never leave Kronos. That's my theory. That she's like, Uncle Worf is the godfather, and he's going to nurture that hunter's instinct as she grows up. But yeah, I mean, seriously, no, that's an excellent pick. I was considering that one as well myself, because she was, a character who we never knew could exist, is just such the perfect realization in really exciting ways. So yeah, that's a great pick.
Fantastic. All right, Dan, how about you? Who's your character?
Okay, my 5 words, which give nothing away: outstanding depth for long-standing character. # guide and conscience. My pick is Deanna Troi.
Oh, fantastic.
I mean,
also Nepenthe.
Yeah, it is episode 7 Nepenthe. I mean, I didn't expect this would be my pick. I had a bunch of other characters I thought I liked more, and I kept thinking, what about Troi? And then I kept cutting her, and then I just realized, no, it's like genuinely the character that I have enjoyed seeing the most is Troi, because I think this is the Troi that I always wanted to see. She is perceptive. She is confident. The value that she gives to Picard, how she literally counsels him, repairs his relationship with Soji, gives them the start they need to trust each other, is so crucial. And she helps way more than Riker does with his mega fleet or, anybody else. I just think that she's doing here what we always knew that she could and should be doing, which is offering insightful, expert counseling and guidance that really genuinely has a, constructive impact on the people who she's helping. And I loved the way her empathic powers are addressed here, and how her grief is kind of amplified by her empathy, because she can, of course, sense her husband's grief, her daughter's grief. And then Picard makes this great, perceptive comment about the way that she senses the fading grief of her daughter is a different kind of grief for her. So again, I felt like the writers were really thinking through what it would mean to be an empath in a really, really intelligent way here. So I've always loved Troi. I loved her in TNG. I loved her in the movies, especially I think in Nemesis, she was like, the underappreciated key part of that film. I loved her in Voyager. And I think here in Picard, this is like the full realization of her character. And it was just so profoundly satisfying to me. I loved seeing Troi.
Yeah, perfectly framed. I'll just add that in the past, the way that she was written was often, unfortunately, as a plot device, just to kind of move things around. And here it's intrinsic. It's a key part of everything happening. And you just framed it as good as you can. She was as important to pointing Jean-Luc in the right direction and getting this thing done as Riker was when he showed up with the fleet. Brilliant observation. Alex and Brooke, your take on Deanna Troi?
Couldn't have said it any better than that. So happy to see her.
Yep.
Absolutely. It was nice to see her outside of the empath and the counselor in work mode, I guess, in a work setting where that was the job that she was there to do. And in this case, this was just driven by pure love.
Perfect. Awesome picks, guys. Okay, well, we'll bookend this. I have the exact same pick as Alex, as you might have predicted. 5 words and a hashtag. Be the captain they remember. Hashtag Romulan lives, no lives. And of course, it's Jean-Luc Picard from Remembrance. And just like Alex, I wanted to try to be clever and go in a different direction, but Picard is my all-time favorite character. And for me, it's just a dream come true to get to see his story play out. Just to have some bonus Picard. And I love this series. I love what they did with it. It was hard at times, but it was amazing. And I'll tell you, my biggest fear going into this series was that I wasn't sure. I doubted Patrick Stewart, honestly. I did. I thought he's been such a part of the zeitgeist in the way that he wasn't prior, during Next Generation. And he's done all these movies and X-Men, and he's just such a big presence that I thought, am I going to be able to see Picard through him and his advanced age and everything else? But man, I couldn't have been more wrong, because right from the get-go, it felt like Picard was back. And I'm just going to highlight 2 moments since we already talked about them. But I love the moment in Remembrance when he says to Soji that her memories are hers and they're real because they're unique to her and her experiences, which just right away when that happened, I thought, oh my gosh, it's the inner light. They're talking about his memories. And he's the perfect character to counsel her in that moment. It's just really special. And then my favorite moment for Picard in the series, in terms of the Picard speech moment, was at the end of Broken Pieces. Again, when he is talking to Rios on the La Sirena bridge, and he's saying that it was Starfleet that betrayed his captain. Starfleet betrayed all of them. And the ban itself was a betrayal, and that the Jade Foss set this trap, but we could have sidestepped it, but instead we gave way to fear. We have these powerful tools: openness, optimism, and the spirit of curiosity. All they have is secrets and fear is the great destroyer. Great Picard speech moment.
Such a great speech. I love that speech.
Really kind of, for me, that just encapsulated the whole series. So, okay, enough on Jean-Luc. If you guys have any other comments, you can plug them into round 1. Let's get into it with our top episode picks. Alex, what's your number 1 pick?
5-word summary: legacy characters done right. # find your Ardani. My favorite episode of the season is season 1, episode 7, Nepenthe. We've said a lot about this episode already in various different forms, but I want to contrast it with my number 3 pick, which was the Captain Riker arrives moment, and he's fully in the sort of Starfleet character. Patrick Stewart and Brent Spiner and a number of the sort of early returning legacy characters and actors had set a challenge for the production team, Patrick specifically. And that was basically, they didn't want to rehash stuff they had done before. Didn't want to play out the same beats, didn't want to do the same catchphrases, didn't want to wear the uniform, wanted this to be a different experience. And over the course of sort of having had that experience be earned, we got some more of those moments layered back in. And you earn the moment of Captain Riker on the bridge of the Zhang He appearing in that last episode because you had Nepenthe, an episode that included these 2 characters, Riker and Troy, who at once were so Riker and Troy, but also at the same time, you really felt the 2 decades that had passed since the last time that you had seen them, that there had been a lot of good about the 2 decades that had transpired, and there had also been a certain amount of tragedy for those characters as well. And it was so great. And the episode is placed in the season so perfectly, in which everything's gotten about as bad as it could be, and then Picard relies on these 2 old confidants to sort of turn things around and set him on the right course that ultimately leads him towards the successful resolution of this mission. Every scene that was on Nepenthe was pure gold. And it was not, there were no phasers, there was no action aside from shields up and 1 shove. This was all about sort of quiet, smaller moments between characters, about making pizza and having a shower and picking vegetables and eating a tomato. And you wouldn't necessarily think that an episode about making pizza would be the best episode of a season of this, rip-roaring science fiction franchise that, has all these different colors and tones to it. But it is. It's the best episode of the season because it's about making pizza and because it's about people and the way that people relate to each other and why that matters. For me, this episode is the best episode of Star Trek Picard season 1. I think will probably end up being one of the best episodes of Star Trek Picard period, and is one of the best episodes of Star Trek to date.
It's that good, no doubt. Great summary. Brooke, you may have a different pick, I don't know, but let's just go to your a pick. What's your round one pick, Brooke? Let's do that.
I do have a different pick. Do you still want to go to
Yeah,
me?
let's do it.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. My 5 words are A Promise is a Prison, and my hashtag is Jolan True. And I picked Absolute Candor.
Oh, awesome.
Which I will admit that up until that point, I had really enjoyed the show. But this one, man, this one, like really, I really connected to this one very quickly. So it really was wonderful from beginning to end. And I'll kind of call back to the novel, Una McCormack's novel, The Last Best Hope. But it was this episode was the perfect companion for that book, which I hope everyone will read. Both the book and this episode together gave us the glimpse into who Picard was during the time of this pending Romulan disaster. And I feel like they both showed us how invested he was in this imperative humanitarian obligation that he felt very strongly that Starfleet had to fulfill. The idea of absolute candor, obviously it's the title, but the concept of absolute candor resonating for a man like Picard, it felt like it gave us a window to see inside who he was now. And I'm using now, like, we're watching him now, but this Picard, because we haven't seen him personally and up close in a really long time. When we knew him in TNG, he wasn't unfeeling, but he was careful and he was really politic in everything that he communicated, even, and I would almost say especially with the people that he was really close to. You hear people who the finale got them right in the gut because Picard finally let out his guard after 7 seasons. That was the Picard we knew in TNG. So between the book and this episode, it felt like absolute candor as a concept, as an emotional and psychological tool, helped Picard kind of dig really deep and reflect on where he'd come to in his life, which I really appreciated. It felt really honest. And to your point earlier, Jim, I honestly, from the second that the show started, I didn't picture any other Patrick Stewart character. Like they until you said it, I was like, oh man, should I have thought that? Should I have noticed it? But it was 100% Picard. And I wanted to pick a favorite moment from a favorite episode. And if I have to pick it, if I'm being honest, it was really small, but my favorite moment in the whole series, I think, is when Admiral Picard, he leans down with his hands on his knees and he tells little Elnor, who at that moment is questioning his personal value as a person to Picard. Picard says, "I like you very much." And I swear, it made me cry at the time, but I swear it was as earnest a moment of absolute candor in speaking to an uncertain child, which we've all been, as I honestly would have said only Mr. Rogers could have pulled off. Like only Mr. Rogers, up until seeing that moment of Picard as that character, like could speak that way to a child. And that is so different from the Picard that we used to know. And it made it really clear to me in that moment that this is a man who's grown in years, but also experience and empathy since we last knew him. And to Alex's observation from the fan community, this isn't the same Picard, but that's the truth for each of us as we age and we experience things. And that to me makes this the most relatable Picard to date. In the whole series of Picard, I felt like he was the most relatable. And so the whole episode was magic to me.
I'm glad you picked it. This is my second favorite episode of the season. And I love that moment that you described with Picard. The reason I love this episode so much is the final 20 minutes is just incredible. You've got the confrontation. He goes into the Romulan-only restaurant. He gets confronted. Elnor shows up. They have the quick battle. He introduces his amazing catchphrase.
Please, my friend. Choose to live. I regret your choice.
I regret your choice. Incredible moment. And then right after that, this amazing battle with a TOS era Romulan bird of prey. And then Seven beams on board. I mean, that last 20 minutes, I just was blown away. It was staggering. I could barely believe what I was watching. I love the episode. And just...
Anyone else think the way of absolute candor sounds potentially annoying?
Dan, Alex, any take on absolute candor?
We've said a lot already about the way that it gives just this really great depth to the Romulans, but I mean, that last space battle and then 7 of 9 showing up right at the end, what an incredible moment.
So good.
7 of 9.
You owe me a ship, Picard.
Dan, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Brooke said was easily as good as the episode itself. That's a great take on the episode. You know, what I responded to most at the time, I think, was the Romulan culture. But I think, Brooke, you're absolutely right about, you know, the Picard-Elnor dynamic. You know, Picard has always been brought out of his comfort zone by children. And it's always been kind of interesting and amusing to see. But that relationship was, I thought, really, I think as much as Elnor needed Picard, Picard needed Elnor as well, especially after what he went through in Generations and this question of, you know, leaving a legacy. And, you know, that relationship is really special and important, I think. And yeah, you described it very, very well.
Love it. Dan, how about you? What's your number one episode?
Okay. 5 words and a hashtag. Life after assimilation is rough. Hashtag perfectly imperfect. This is episode 5, Stardust City Rag.
Wow! All right.
Yeah. Okay, I mean,
I love it.
This is honestly my favorite, but I will say I did not love everything about it. You know, the opening flashback with Icheb was definitely too gruesome for me and heartbreaking as well. But 7 of 9 is to me one of the greatest characters ever in all of Trek. And her return in Picard is, to me, as satisfying as, you know, Picard's return. And in just like this one episode here, they sketch so much of her, you know, experience from Voyager getting back to Earth to where she is now with so little, you know, direct reference. It's all implication. It's all, you know, micro expressions. And I just thought Jerry Ryan was so good. The 7 of 9 character was so good. The, you know, relationship with Bjayzl and how much is implied about their past relationship. We can kind of imagine it all playing out in very nuanced ways, yet nothing is really described. I love the scenes with 7 and Picard. It's, you know, it's what I didn't know I wanted to see until I saw it. And that final conversation where she asks him, you know, you think you got your humanity back after assimilation? And he immediately says yes. And she says, all of it? And then he, you know, we realize that's the killer question. And he was only Locutus for like a day. So with the impact of that for her must be, you know, an order of magnitude bigger. So I love all that. This episode has my favorite scene with Raffi in the entire season. The scene with her son is, I mean, it's not even anything to do with science fiction, really. It's just so raw and so real. This ex-addict trying to make amends. And the actor who plays her son, Gabe, Mason Gooding, is so on point in this very short scene.
So good.
It's, I mean, that scene really kind of killed me among all of them in the season because it was just so painful and real and absolutely authentic. I love the, you know, the deep cut references to Quark and Mott the Barber from the Enterprise D. I love that cutie video of Bruce Maddox that Agnes is watching, where he's baking a cake, because this is like a metaphor for like synthetic life, right? You know, he replicates all the ingredients and then he bakes them together, because even though all the parts are artificial, when you create something, there's an alchemy that kind of gives it life. And I loved that shorthand way to kind of express what it is that Maddox and Sung are doing. And yeah, it was in spite of how it began, it was a fun episode. I love that Patrick Stewart is a great actor, but Jean-Luc Picard is a terrible actor. His eye patch and his awful, I mean, just, you know, embarrassingly wonderfully horrible to watch Picard trying to be undercover. So yeah, I found the whole episode, you know, emotionally exhausting and exhilarating and challenging. And it's a very dark episode with some very dark themes, but I don't think it's compromising on the values of Star Trek. And for all those elements combined, this is my sneaky pick, because I get to talk about Michelle Hurd's acting as Raffi, which was amazing. She could have been my number 2 pick, and 7 of 9, who could have easily been my favorite character. So yeah, this is kind of the best of everything in the season in this one episode. So
I love that you picked this. It's a polarizing episode from a lot of people.
It really is,
because you mentioned Icheb really in passing at the beginning. Obviously, a tough moment. The tone of this one is really it's tough for me. I'm a big tone guy. I love this episode, by the way. It's in my top half for sure. But I struggle with the tone because you have 3 brutal murders in this episode with Maddox, Bjayzl, and Icheb, sandwiched around this fun, hijink style casino romp. So, but I think it works. Mr. Vup is great. It's so much fun that, once you kind of, that initial jarring viewing where the tones are a little bit sporadic, the second, third, fourth viewing, I really, really enjoy this episode. It's very rewatchable and very fun. Glad you picked it so we can talk about it. Brooke and Alex, what's your take on Stardust City Rag?
I'll take a Temtebe Lagoon with 2 umbrellas.
2 umbrellas and a feather in my cap, which 7 suggested. Brilliant.
You have a meeting with Mr. Vup. Yeah, Rios. You seriously really need to sell this. You can't do your broody, existentialist spaceman routine. Your personality needs to match your clothes. You need to show a little panache.
You need a feather in your hat.
Temtebe Lagoon, if it's not too much bother, and a game tablet. With 2 umbrellas. And if you can please let Mr. Vup know that I'm here. The name is Rios.
Mr. Vup knows.
Feeling lucky, Mr. Rios.
I appreciate everything you said, Dan, and I think it'll probably give me a different perspective when I go to do a beginning to end rewatch, which I'm really excited to do. I haven't had time yet, but we've had very little time since the last episode aired. But my guess is that some of the difficult parts will feel a little bit smoother when you can take the forest rather than the trees. So I'm looking forward to that.
Well said. Awesome pick, Dan. Super fired up. We got to talk about Stardust City Rag. All right, so let's close it out. My pick will come as no surprise if you ever followed me on Twitter. This is one of my all-time favorite Star Trek episodes, and I'm not afraid to say that. It's definitely best of both worlds good, City on the Edge of Forever good. I love it. 5 words and a hashtag. You could have each other. Hashtag Kestra, Troy, Riker. It's Nepenthe. And we've talked about it a little bit with Alex. We've talked about it with Brooke's pick. One of the things in my Prime Directive, I said that I was going to spread it around a bit. So I've avoided Nepenthe in all my picks up to now. And that's because I could have easily picked Nepenthe for all 5 of my picks, which I'm going to do right now. My number 5 production design element is the Troy Riker house. The shields up, the ready room, dining room scene is one of my favorite things about Star Trek Picard when she says, let's use my dining room as your ready room. And then they literally do it. It's so smart. Actor or performer, we already talked about her, Marina Sirtis as Deanna Troy. I said it then, I'll say it again, that her efforts, her performance here was so intrinsic to helping Picard. It was amazing, where she didn't just feel like an afterthought, like unfortunately so many times in TNG. She did. Number 3, Dabo Round was Riker, pizza chef. Just so good. And I got a shout out to Hugh's death scene as well, whether you like it or not. The performance from Jonathan Del Arco was amazing, and his last line was super emotional and really pays off well at the end of the series. Number 2 character, we already talked about her, Kestra Troy Riker. I literally want to bawl every time I think about her talking about Data. It just tears my heart out. I love this. The direction from Doug Arniokoski and Michael Chabon wrote it with Samantha Humphrey. So incredible. Any other comments from you guys on Nepenthe, Brooke and Dan?
I adored this episode. I loved it so much. I have nothing critical to say about it at all. It was soaringly wonderful.
Yeah, and it fits my prime directive, which was it was the warmest episode of all of them. It felt like a Star Trek hug.
It sure did. Awesome. All right. Any secondary systems picks for you guys? Alex, any you want to rattle off?
I've got 3.
Okay.
The Starfleet uniform from when the Romulan rescue effort failed, the Admiral Picard uniform. Excellent Starfleet uniform.
Mm-hmm.
The shot in Impossible Box where Picard is swiping through the images on his computer, and the image of Locutus is superimposed over him and he reaches up to touch his face. And 3, the Kaplan F-17 speed freighter, aka La Sirena herself, the ship, is actually a really cool design that grew on me a lot over the course of the season, and I really, really like it.
Agreed. It's a really interesting ship, but it really served what they needed it to do. Brooke, what do you got for secondary systems picks?
I would say that I picked my favorite actor based on screen time, but I've really appreciated all that Jonathan Del Arco has shared, both at STLV last year and then throughout since then, sharing his inspirations and his experiences and what it's been like to be on 30 years ago. And so I admit he would be my second pick. And I don't know if this is production design or Dabo, but seeing 10 forward and Alex and I both picked Blue Skies as the conclusion of this whole journey, but like it was also the first moment of this journey, as it, the one of the classic recordings played. But as we swooped into 10 forward and how that felt so familiar, and I found that very comforting in a brand new show. That I imagine that for somebody that hadn't watched it before, it was still a great setting. It was neither here nor there, but like to start us out in somewhere that we knew, I don't know. I felt appreciated. I felt seen, I guess, as a lifelong fan.
And in context now with the bookend of the final, It's really, really genius how they started this series. Dan, any secondary systems picks?
Yeah, I mean, the only one I was really seriously considering was, like Brooke just said, Jonathan Del Arco for performer, because, I'll be honest, when they announced the returning cast, I think at the same time they said Brent Spiner's back, and I was like, yes, and Jerry Ryan's back, and I was so hyped. Jonathan Del Arco is back, and I was like, yeah, to be honest, I didn't think that he was particularly intrinsic as Hugh. I didn't think that his performance was that particularly special. But, I was so wrong. When he came back in that role, his acting was so great. And, the hug with Picard was such a brilliantly heartfelt, genuine moment, expressed so beautifully. It kind of gave me goosebumps. And his social media presence, his openness about his personal life has really given, I think, a massive resonance to the character of Hugh and the story of, recovery for the ex-Borg. Yep. So, Jonathan Del Arco, despite my cynical dismissal of him and me underestimating him, he was absolutely superb in the role and completely deserved being brought back under a spotlight because he was great. So great.
That's amazing. When you started telling that story, I thought you were going to say that you were most excited for him, because that's what when they said Jonathan Del Arco, I was like, oh my God, this story is going really deep if they're bringing back Hugh. So I love that. Brooke, were you going to say something?
I don't want to cut back in, but I don't think this really fits in any category, but I feel really bad if we ended a Picard season 1 discussion without, like, for me, man, I had never really latched onto the Borg as the sympathetic beings that I did during this show. And that felt like something that they were driving home with multiple characters, with multiple episodes. And he was a huge part of that. But as victims, I will readily admit that I don't think I'd seen them that way. And I will also admit that as I get older, I think that I I think my empathy grows as I get older, and I appreciated seeing this now. And I feel like going back and doing rewatches, it's going to cast a very different light on all of my previous thoughts about the Borg. And it felt like a significant. We want Star Trek to teach us things that we turn off the TV and we leave with, and that felt really significant to me.
Love it. Good summary. I'm still trying to get over the fact that even though Dan came around, that his initial take on Hugh he wasn't that impressed.
Too honest, maybe, Jim.
Absolute kid.
Did he just diss Hugh and I Borg? What the hell? All right, awesome take. All mine have been covered except for one of my secondary systems. It's a great one to end on because his work in this entire season was exceptional. It's Jefferson Russo, the composer. His score in this series was spectacular. So, okay, that's a lot. We're still going. We're still going, people. Hang with us. We're going to get into our regeneration cycle, very appropriate right now, and recap some of our picks and the stats.
Computer, activate regeneration cycle. Alcoves beta and gamma.
All right, let's do a quick recap of the picks. Alex, go through it.
Number 5, Blue Skies by Issa Briones and Jeff Russo from the season finale Et in Arcadia Ego Part 2. My number 4 pick was Michael Chabon, and the episode I picked was The Impossible Box. My Dabo Round pick was The Arrival of Captain Riker, also in the season finale of season 1. My number 2 pick for best character was Jean-Luc Picard himself. My episode pick was the pilot Remembrance. And my pick for best episode for Star Trek Picard season 1 was Nepenthe.
Love it. 5 different episodes represented there. And Brooke, how about you?
Round 5 was Blue Skies, sung by Data's daughter. During our farewell, round 4, my top actor was Santiago Cabrera as Rios and all of the holograms. Round 3, my Dabo pick is the Synth Colony. Round 2, my top character is Kestra, the daughter of Will Indiana. And round 1, my episode was Absolute Candor.
Love it. Dan, how about you?
Okay, first round production design element was the Daystrom Institute in Okinawa from episode 1, Remembrance. Best performance was Alison Pill, episode 8, Broken Pieces. Dabo Round was the Romulans, episode 4, Absolute Candor. Favorite character, Deanna Troi, episode 7, Nepenthe. And favorite episode was episode 5, Stardust City Rag.
Fantastic. And my number 5 pick, production design element, was The Artifact in the season finale. Number 4, my top performer was Alison Pill in Broken Pieces. Number 3, my Dabo Round pick was the Rios holograms from The End is the Beginning. Number 2, Jean-Luc Picard, top character from Remembrance. And my number 1 episode, Nepenthe. So there were 4 duplicates, all 4 of which were 4 of my 5 picks. So that's awesome. So like-minded guests tonight for me. That's excellent. So quick breakdown of the totals. We had 9 of the 10 episodes represented. The lone holdout, not really a surprise if you look at most people's top 10 lists. And it's not that it's a bad episode, but they just kind of stuffed it in there when they expanded the first 2 episodes into 3. So it's the second episode, Maps and Legends, did not get a mention. So breaking it down, 1 vote each for Et in Arcadia Ego Part 1. The End is the Beginning, Stardust City Rag, and The Impossible Box. 2 votes for Absolute Candor. 3 votes each for Broken Pieces and Remembrance, which makes sense. And then at the top, this is kind of an upset, with 4 picks each was Nepenthe, but also the season finale, Et in Arcadia Ego Part 2. So cool breakdown there. We knew this was going to be a great topic, but hey, guess what? We've entered a temporal causality loop. So before we can depart, it's time to hear from you.
The Enterprise has been caught up in a temporal causality loop, and I suspect that something similar may have happened to you.
This week's temporal causality loop is going to be a quick one because, and by coincidence, next up on our list of past shows to cover was episode 74, which happened to be our top 5 Picard episodes. So we're going to talk some more Picard here. We did that one as a preview to the Picard series when it was launching. So yeah, after 90 minutes plus of talking about Picard, we're going to do it some more. So 2 awesome lists with 5 words and a hashtag that came in. One from Matthew Parsons, who is at MattyPA81. His number 5, 3 Picards in 1. Yeah. Hashtag not crazy, damn it. And it's all good things. His number 4, arrogance taken down a peg. Hashtag run. Q who. I love that hashtag run. Number 3, Picard is a comedy god. Hashtag Mrs. Picard, and it's Menage a Troy, which is brilliant. Number 2, the captain I want always. Hashtag not on my ship. Measure of a man. And his number 1, too obvious, but what else? Hashtag best Trek episode. Oh, it's his favorite. The Inner Light, which is one of my all-time favorites as well. And then Chris at Shelf Nerds, he had Picard the Archaeologist, hashtag 7 days from The Chase, which is really cool. Deep cut pick. Number 4, If the Cause is Just, hashtag Romulan Face Off, the Defector, of course. Number 3, oh boy, I didn't realize this was on here. Challenged into vulnerable intimacy, hashtag Team Darren Lessons. Chris tricked me by sneaking Team Darren in there since we are Team Bosch here at TrekRanks. Number 2, nuanced performance of anxiety, hashtag major growth. It's Iborg. And number 1, great deep cut pick, learning to live with trauma, hashtag I wasn't strong enough. Of course, it's family card. And then one more cool 5 words and a hashtag that we got from Stephen P at Stephen_Pastron, Pastran. His number 1 episode was, again, one of the greatest Trek episodes ever, The Inner Light, top 5 at TNG Trek Ranks. And his hashtag was remember, put your shoes away, hashtag the turning point for Picard's character. Love that. It really was a great growth point. So once again, those picks definitely good enough to clear ourselves from this week's temporal causality loop. So as always, I want to thank everyone for giving us all your great responses here on TrekRanks. So please keep your list coming to me at TrekRanks on Twitter so we can retweet them. But we also want to hear from you. So put together your own list of top 5 Picard Season 1 moments or a list from any of our past shows. Give us a call at the Tricorder Transmissions at 609-512-5527. That's 609-512-LLAP. Or you can always just DM me a recording of your picks, and we can do it that way too. It's a lot easier. So hopefully we'll hear from you so you can be featured on the next episode of TrekRanks. And on the next episode of TrekRanks, we are getting current. So I kind of alluded to this at the top of the show. We try to keep our shows so they don't get carbon dated. We kind of try to keep them timeless. But right now, as we record this, everyone is hunkered down and sheltered in place during this global pandemic that has been caused by the coronavirus. So with everyone basically under a stay-at-home order at one level or another in these crazy times, we're going to do our top 5 sheltered-in-place episodes. And to be clear, that's an in-universe sheltered-in-place. So we're looking for episodes in which a character or characters have to kind of be holed up or sheltered in one location and they need to stay there. So Alex, Brooke, and Dan, if you guys had to choose one sheltered-in-place episode, I want to hear what they are. And I'm going to go with you first, Dan, because I know you've been sheltered in place a little longer than the rest of us because you're in Korea. So you've been down for about 6 weeks. I think the rest of us about 3 weeks. So Dan, what is your Trek sheltered in place episode?
I think I would have to say Civil Defense from Deep Space Nine, where they literally cannot leave the station. They're all cut off from each other, and Quark and Odo are stuck together in Odo's office. It's a great episode of claustrophobia and trying to escape from the circumstances.
Definitely a perfect pick. Brooke, how about you?
Is it The Forsaken?
Oh, yeah.
That when Waxana and Odo are stuck in a turbo lift. Yep. I I have distinct memories of seeing that as a kid, so that would definitely be my pick.
Oh, I like that. That's a good deep cut as well. Alex, how about you, man? Sheltered in Place.
My pick would be Shattered from Star Trek Voyager Season 7, where the ship is fractured into all kinds of different temporal points. And you've got like Scorpion era Borg, you've got Year of Hell era Mess Hall, you've got Kazon Takeover era Engineering, and Caretaker era Bridge.
I love it. Good. 3 awesome picks. That's going to be a fun topic to think about during this tough time. So, okay, I think we're done. Before we wrap it up, a huge thanks to Alex Perry, Brooke Horton, and Dan Martin. Awesome to have you guys on. Any final Trek subspace communications you guys want to relay before we go, Alex?
Engage.
Oh, man. That last engage was so good. Such a great moment. Brooke, how about you?
I appreciate that you brought up what we're going through now, because I didn't want to be contrary to your no carbon dating policy, but getting together tonight to talk to you guys from all over, wherever we're from, it's really helped with how isolating right now feels. And I feel like Trek on the whole in social media has been like a real balm during all of this, being able to talk about something that we love. And so I really appreciate it. So I appreciate everyone that's listening that has been communicating on Twitter and sharing. And I appreciate you guys for the chance to talk about this with some real people.
When this episode drops, we'll still be in the middle of it. It's crazy.
Yep, absolutely.
Dan, how about you, man? How you?
Yeah,
I hope you had fun on your first Trek Ranks.
Just a second vote for human interaction. That's always nice at the moment to have. And yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been really fun to be on Trek Ranks as a participant and not just a listener. So yeah, take care of everybody and look after yourselves.
I love it. Great job, guys. And thanks, everyone, again for engaging with us here on episode 80 of the Trek Ranks podcast. As always, I want to close by saying I'm looking forward to standing with you again here in this place where I belong.
The navigation sensors are back at maximum range. Whatever it was, it scraped off pretty easily. So, are we excited? Intimidated? Maybe a teensy bit starstruck? Jean-Luc Picard, chief contact with a Q continuum, arbiter of succession for the Klingon Empire, savior of Earth from Borg invasion, captain of the Enterprise's D&E. The man even worked alongside the great Spock. You're an emergency hologram. We no longer have a navigational emergency. Why are you still here? Well, someone is experiencing an acute moodiness overload.
Just want to remind everyone again that the entire Trek Ranks catalog is available for you to download and listen to at TrekRanks.com and on your podcast player of choice. Our episodes never get carbon dated, so check out the topics you've missed and maybe just want to listen to again over at TrekRanks.com. And a reminder to check out our friends 5-Year Mission at 5yearmission.net. They're writing a song for every episode of Star Trek, and you won't believe how great their music is. They also have a podcast at the Trek Geeks Network, so seek them out. You won't regret it.
I hate that he died thinking it was really Starfleet that betrayed him. Betrayed itself.
But Starfleet did betray him. We did betray ourselves. Long before O gave Vandermeer that order. The ban itself was a betrayal. Or the Zhat Vash, they set the trap. But we could merely have sidestepped it. Instead, we gave way to fear.
All of 5 minutes to hack my ship, Picard. And now, maybe there's a whole planet of them. Raffi said the Romulans called her the Destroyer. What if they're right?
They may be right about what happened 200,000 years ago. The past is written. But the future is left for us to write, and we have powerful tools, Rios. Openness, optimism, and the spirit of curiosity. All they have is secrecy and fear. And fear is the great destroyer, Rios, not...
We're there.